Hey guys, Julian here, and today, you can see I've set the studio up a little bit more, and we are going to be talking about how to make UK garage sort of like MJ Cole, Jeremy Sylvester, Wookie, that very deep house influence stuff, but still very groovy and garage with a two-step beat. As usual, you can get the full project file, samples, MIDI, presets, everything from this video is available at the top of the description on my Bandcamp. This is a really great way to support me if you guys enjoyed these videos, and yeah, let's dive in. Alright, so right off the bat, we are at 130 BPM, and the first sound that we have up here is going to be this house organ. So this is following the chord progression of the track, which is this pretty simple progression, where what I did is I just took an F sharp minor 9 chord. That's what this is. So you can see we have a regular F sharp minor chord, but then we also have a minor 7th and a minor 9th in there. So then you put that all together, and you get this very like jazzy, very deep house influenced chord as well. If we're talking about that style, you know, it's very much like that. And yeah, so what's happening here is it's this chord progression where we just took that and put it across the keyboard. Like there's that one, and then I went up plus 3. That's minus 2, but exact same chord shape still. And that's just 1 up from the root. But again, like, it's just kind of taking that shape and spreading it across the keyboard and kind of getting a little bit more creative with it. Rather than trying to keep it, like, super musical and super, like, perfectly fitting into a scale. Like, just taking that one chord shape and getting that very kind of classic deep house style feel out of it. The other thing about this is if you look at like the other instruments, you can see that like this is the chord progression, which you're looking at right now, where it's these long held out chords. So then what I did is I wrote this pattern to be more rhythmic, right? Like you can even just write this with one note, and then what you do is then you just go and put the chords in the places where it fits, if that makes any sense. Like you have this rhythm where it's gonna go dun dun dun, and this chord is happening here. So it's that rhythm with this chord. Like, it's not that hard to plug that in. And I'll also say that, like, the actual placement of the notes is pretty important as well. You want to be, pretty scarce with it. You want to be able to, like, have a lot of space between the notes. So that then when they do hit, and when there is that one, like, 16th note bouncing through, it's very impactful. And for the sound, this is just this classic house organ sound. You may recognize it. Yeah, a million tracks use that same type of organ, but it's literally just that organ sample. And then it's just playing chords with it, basically, so you get a more interesting thing. And then I just have a really short reverb on that. Then we have the vocals. So what I've done here is we have this vocal. Which I'll play you the original sample. So it's that, and then you can see I took it and I chopped it a bit. I had this part pitched down. But then, what I also did, you can see that's just going through a bit of echo, is we made these little chops using it. And the way I did that is you just take the sample, and you can literally just right click on it. And then see how it says slice to new MIDI track? I did that, and then I did the 8th note setting. So basically it's just taking every 8th note and making a slice out of that. And then what happens is you get these cool kind of like Ableton loops them by default. But then you can just make those like into this short little pattern where it's like and this is all just bouncing off of what's already happening in the groove with like the bass line. the chords, and all that, but you can hear that, like, it's not just like a random chop, you know? It's all fitting together, like, all these bouncy patterns, all these different rhythms, all these different things that are happening in a very kind of like, it might seem like a messy kind of way. You know, they're actually all playing off each other, and they have to all be kind of talking to each other, or else it isn't going to work. And that's not as hard as it sounds, you know, because when you're writing a note, I mean, you have a choice to put it in a random place or to put it in the place where it's going to make sense with the groove that's already happening, you know. Just listen through and really listen to this, not just by itself, but along with the other sounds in the track, and really hear how you can fit that into the groove. And then over here, the pattern becomes a little bit less busy. You can hear I just took the same one and just cut out some of the notes. And not just because this thing comes in there. So it's even kind of grooving with like that. But yeah, you just want to make sure like there's enough room, like with these vocal chops and with all the different sounds that are going to be happening in this track. You got to make sure that like they're not fighting too much. So if you have something come in there, you can have this play like less notes, you know, to make it all fit. And then for the effects on that vocal chop, it's just a little bit of echo. That's all it is. Really, it's going to be pretty dry. Like, you're not really going to have too many, like, long reverbs or long delays in this style of a track. So, yeah, then after the vocals, we have the string. So, yeah, this is just this nice little pattern. It's just meant to fit in with what's already happening musically here. You know, like we've got... And it's almost breaking the scale a little bit, like this note. Technically shouldn't really fit, but I think it sounds kind of cool. It's just a very, like, animated, sort of lively sound. And also, I think a big thing about these style of tracks, especially like the original, like more early garage stuff, or definitely the stuff from like the late 90s too and like the 2000s, is it has a very almost like R&B influence to it, right? Like a very like kind of 2000s, late 90s R&B vibe in there, especially with the vocals a lot of the time. But with these kinds of sounds too, and I think this really channels like that style of just very big, like bombastic, like full sounds. And yeah, so all this is it's just a string ensemble. It's just a pizzicato setting. I have a high pass filter on there so it doesn't clash with anything too much. And yeah, then we have just our main chords, which is this Wurlitzer sound. So here's the actual chords. Again, you start with this progression, and then you go and like do the bouncy ones, like the organ and stuff. But I started with this. Again, you can just see the chords really plain and simple here. It's just the same shape, just kind of like arranged in a way that sounds really nice. And then for the sound here, I'm using, I believe this is tension, I want to say in Ableton, or yeah, I want to say it's tension. Maybe it's electric. And then that's just going through a bit of reverb. You know, just one of those like live sounds. The thing about these is that like in these kind of tracks is that, you know, it's a lot more sounds that may be synthesized, but you're going for like a very like live, like jazzy kind of instrumentation. You're not trying, it's not like techno where we're trying to create sounds that people have never heard before. It's like, you know, we're going to use something kind of predictable here, but it's just going to work really well. Then we have these tremolo strings. So all these are, yeah, it's just a string ensemble, and then what I'm doing is they're playing the second and the fourth chord. So if you hear that with the chord progression, so it kind of makes that second chord like really lift up. So this is just a little dynamic thing that you can do to really like bring this to life, you know. It takes this chord progression and makes it feel like it's kind of building more tension this way without taking up too much space. You know, it's not the biggest sound, it's not going to take over the whole mix, but it's just going to fit in there really nice. And the secret to this one is I turn the attack up, so it's like fading into the sound. And also, this is meant to work really well with the pizzicato string because you see it goes dun 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 dun, and then you have this thing play, and then even though the pizzicato string is playing something there, it's like a lot less busy, you know. It's like you get a bit of call and response between these two. And yeah, I think that dynamic is really important here. Then we have the bass line. So the bass line's actually pretty simple because notes-wise, it's just the root notes of all the chords. And that's usually what you're going to want to do. You know, you don't need to do too much craziness with adding in extra notes from the scale. Pretty much just the root note of whatever chord is being played at whatever given time. And then just octaves of that. But then where it really comes down to it, I think it's just the groove. You know, really making a groove with the kick. And really with the drums in general. You know, those are all talking to each other. It's not just a bunch of random bouncy notes. It's all fitting together. And then you combine that with the house organ. See, they're all written to add more energy to each other. And then we combine that with the vocal chop. You know, it's not just about knowing how to make the FM donk sound. A lot of it really is the programming and just like, you know, really writing these things in the right way. I think a lot of those classic UK garage producers, especially like MJ Cole, like really, really good at just writing music in general and kind of making that work. So then for the bassline sounds, it's 2 layers. So we have kind of like a more plucky donk sound. You can see, yeah, this is just 3 sine waves here. Second one's detuned a little bit. They're at different octaves and they have kind of this plucky envelope thing going on. And then just going into a low pass filter with an envelope, a little bit of a pitch envelope. And then I have a high pass, and then this has got some chorus on it. And this is part of the benefit of having this higher mid-range layer is that, you know, we can put chorus on it and it can be stereo, but then we can also have the sub underneath it to keep the bass. And this is just a square wave with a little bit of FM from a sine wave going into a low pass filter to make it nice and deep. And yeah, pretty simple bassline sounds there, you know, not needing too much processing because it's already just a really fat sound coming out of the synth. And yeah, then we have the drums. So you can hear the beat is pretty full, you know, there's a pretty solid amount of stuff happening, like a lot of hi-hats, a lot of percussion, but it never takes over kind of the main drums, right? Like I think the big thing about this style is that when you're doing this very busy beat and you have like, you know, if you look in here, like there's a lot of little background percussions. The key is just making sure that like these main drums, like the main kick, the main hi-hat, these layers need to be really solid on their own, but also they need to be much bigger than the background percussion. Like these drum racks with the different percussion sounds, those need to be kind of tiny, and then that's what's gonna make the big, like the main drums feel really big and full. Is that contrast between them. So for the kick, this is just a 909 kick. Straight up, just like a nice fat 909. And I think that's really what you're going to want to use for a lot of these tracks. You know, it's very house influenced. It's very much got that kind of feel to it. So I think like 909 drums at least for the kick, are usually one of the best places to start. And then we just have that layered out and leveled at the right spot in the mix. Then we move up to the rim shot, which is 2 layers. So we've got this one, and then this one. So you can hear they each do something different, but then when you put them together, you get a really fat and full rim shot. And I think a lot of people are wondering this, like, how do you get that perfect UK garage rim shot? Well, the truth is, it doesn't really exist. You know, it's not really just out there. But what you can do is you can just find really good quality sounds. And I think if you layer together, like, 2 or 3 of these that aren't clashing, that's how you get that really fat rim shot like you hear in the tracks that you just, like, can't quite get with one sample. And the big thing here is you gotta make sure the kick and the snare like this kind of have like the same punch. Like it needs to be boom. It can't be like boom, because that's gonna mess up the groove, right? You need these to be hitting really hard or else the groove isn't really gonna be there. And then we have our main hi-hat, which is just, yeah, this nice like kind of shorter 909 style hi-hat. I've got it high passed. So again, lots of 909 sounds in here, you know, especially the kick and the hi-hat. Then we move down to this little tambourine. You know, just a nice live tambourine, very housey there. And then the next thing after that is going to be these background hi-hats. So the technique here is I just grabbed a bunch of different hi-hats and brought them into a drum rack here. You can see I didn't even end up using all of the ones that I brought in, but that's fine. The goal here is that you're just going to grab a bunch of samples that you might not even know what they sound like beforehand, but once they're in there, that's when you find the groove. And I think this is a really great way to get yourself started because obviously a lot of times if you say, okay, I'm going to find, like in this case, it's 12 different hi-hats, you could spend an entire afternoon looking for 12 hi-hats that sound good together. And by the time you found those, you still haven't even programmed them. You haven't even made, like, that much of your beat. But if you just take, like, however many from a sample pack, drop them into a drum rack, and just trust, like, okay, I'm going to find something cool with this. You know, it's a lot faster and a lot more fun process this way, I think. So yeah, it's just everything kind of bouncing around that main hi-hat there. You can see all the swing throughout this entire project file I did by hand as well. You know, that can kind of give it a more lively feel, doing it by hand. But then after that, I also have this drum rack up here. And this is like percussion. So now we have one that's doing the background hi-hats and one that's doing the background percussion. And you can hear that's not only filling in the beat really well, but it's also kind of talking to the background hi-hats. So that it all fits together really well in the whole track. And yeah. So, that's going to be it for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. And let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get the full project files, samples, MIDI, presets, every single thing from this video is available right at the top of the description on my Bandcamp. Once again, it's a really great way to support me if you guys enjoyed these videos. Thank you so much for the support, everybody, and I will see you tomorrow with another video.